It's always cold in Scranton.
That's why it was a highly dangerous job.
I can only imagine. Could rain, snow, I mean, come on, fog. They couldn't, sometimes they would get the cars launched and they didn't see where they were going because it was so foggy. All right. So here's the riders riding down their tracks. You can see one's way down, getting ready to be attached to its train. Now, these tracks, some of them are a mile long, right? They're huge. This is a huge yard. You know, we're talking probably 20 tracks that are a mile long. So some of the riders are a mile away and they have to get back. So the trolley operation was run in the middle of the yard to get them back to the hump so they could start all over again.
So the trivia question of the day is what four-wheel bobber became that?
Do you know the answer?
No, I don't.
Is it a bobber?
Yeah, no, it's a bobber. Yeah, it's definitely a bobber. And they turned it into a trolley. There's another one that's not a bobber. I don't know why one is and one isn't, but...
Yeah, it's got the wood sides on the back.
Right. Now, of course, that, as Gary pointed out, that was a dangerous job, and it's just by its nature. So it was, of course, incumbent on the Lackawanna to automate it where it could, so that safety was improved and that actually classification could be improved. So thanks to Bob, I got these pictures of the yard. They spent millions of dollars automating the Hampton yard, and they put in retarders, which instead of a brakeman on each car slowing the car down, now these retarders would slow down the car. All right? And so you have no need for car riders or a trolley anymore. It's all automated. And this is a view from Tower A, looking at Tower B. Right? I'm assuming one was for eastbound and another one was for westbound, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm guessing that's why.
What's the date on that photo?
1937. And from newspaper articles, it's documented that's when they did it. They spent millions, and they actually reworked the roundhouse to fit larger engines, which 9 years later would be totally wasted because diesel started taking over. Here's another view of the yard and the retarders. Here's a view of the yard in the beginning. What's interesting in this view is you can see the Archibald coal breaker, all right? And you can see the Holden coal breaker, both DL&W operations. There's like 7 operations that surround Hampton Yard. So of course it was nice, it was convenient to put the coal yard there, right? This is during World War I, looking north, pretty busy, doing a lot of World War I traffic. This is the peak of the Lackawanna River. This is when it's really doing its biggest business. This is the south end of the Hampton Yard, and obviously since the south end is so far away, we had to have some offices down the other end to make sure everything went smoothly. So, and you can still see that the trolley line went all the way to the very southern end of the yard. All right, let's talk about the Taylor Colliery. So this is at the end of the Hampton Yard, not far from the end of the Hampton Yard.
You and your brother, right?
I'll be honest with you, when I look at that, I think, well, when we sled it, it didn't look much different than that because our mother used to bundle us up like ticks or something, and we were just totally wrapped in warm clothes like that. But this is the original Taylor Colliery, which was not far from the Hampton Yard. You can see each colliery had areas where there was empties stationed, and then the loaded cars would be put in another small yard, and of course they'd be taken to the Hampton. This is an old style mine, so this is old style breaker, because in this case you can see the breakers built the hoist that lifts over the shaft, that lifts the coal out of the mine. The breaker is right over the shaft. Right? That's the way they did it in the beginning. And we'll talk about why they changed it later on. So the coal never went outside. It was brought up and processed right inside the breaker. The DL&W decided to modernize this breaker. They built, Truesdale being a big fan of concrete, decided to build the first and only all-concrete breaker in Taylor in 1911. So the boys were sledding over here somewhere before. And it opened in 1911. It replaced this. Since this old breaker was built right over the shaft, what they did is they knocked down the old breaker and they put a hoist over the shaft, and now the coal goes from the hoist up to the top of the coal breaker. So now it's a modernized operation where the mining of the coal and the processing of the coal are totally separate. And again, we'll talk about why they did that later. It seems more intuitive that you just haul it right up into the breaker. All right, this is the pine colliery, and I'm just gonna give you some quick stats on this. This will be the last thing in the Kaiser Valley. It opened in the early 1870s. It mined 15.5 million tons for the coal for the DL&W. Glenn Alden operated it until 1933 and employed up to 1,000 men in this mine. It sat idle for a couple of years until mining resumed, and then Moffett finally bought it, and in 1965 it closed. I remember as a kid seeing an Erie Lackawanna train on these tracks. Believe it or not, that's Kaiser Avenue, which is the main road. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Scranton, but it's the main road on the west side of the Valley of Scranton, and we used to cross, and I saw an Erie Lackawanna train there when I was a kid. So it was still serving this breaker, or this mine. So this is the end of the Kaiser Valley branch. This is the Y, where the Kaiser Valley branch meets the Bloomsburg. And that's at Taylor Yard. Taylor Yard was built largely to hold empty coal hoppers. That's where that train we just saw in the last picture, this is where it was. All right, let's talk about the Bloomsburg branch. How are we on time?
12.
You're just about at the end.
Okay, all right. So, sorry about that, folks. I'll just stop at the Bloomsburg. But the Bloomsburg was equally as busy, and there was a Scranton section and a Wilkes-Barre section. Bloomsburg branch starts at Bridge 60, right here, and it goes south towards Wilkes-Barre. You can see this is the Bridge 60, this is the CNJ, the DNH, and you can see a train going on the Bloom, and already right first thing, you're not even a quarter of a mile down the Bloom, there's a coal operation, all right? And that's one of the first operations that the DL&W built. It's called the Oxford Colliery. It mined quite a bit of coal, but the DL&W ended up selling it in 1900, don't know why. And that company that picked it up actually mined more coal out of it than the DL&W did. Why they did that? There was a small yard just south of Oxford where they staged empties at one point. It's called the Hyde Park Yard. You can see a lot of coal was going on there. The Bellevue, which was the second operation on the Bloomsburg, actually had a station for passengers. Wow. The Bellevue plant also had a creosote plant. So when you creosote ties, you're typically using coal tar to creosote the ties. And so you can see that they actually had a manufacturing operation to creosote ties, and that probably for largely use on their own road. So it wasn't just the colliery, it was a creosote tie operation. Just below that was the Dodge. And then this one's interesting. This is one that the DL&W bought. They didn't build it, but they bought it and rebuilt it. And you can see right across, that's the Taylor Yard in 1906. It was only a couple of tracks in 1906, but you can see a crane here operating a steam shovel, and it's digging out so it can widen the Taylor Yard to 17 tracks. And you can also see the Taylor breaker.
It's amazing today compared to that. How many trees are grown back?
It's mostly overgrown at this point. At the south end, this is very busy today. The Norfolk Southern uses this. Back then, of course, it was still busy. It was an interchange between the CNJ and the DL&W. There was another yard below Taylor, which was also used to interchange with the CNJ, from what I can read. That's long gone. That's gone about 50 years. This is a breaker that's being constructed. This is a DL&W breaker. You can see the hoist, and then later on they enclose it, because it's right over. The coal goes right to the breaker. All right, that's just the Scranton end of things, and then you cross over the Susquehanna, and now we're going into the Wyoming Valley. And you can see lots of operations. Just very quickly, I'll go through this. Kingston was the start. where a lot of the traffic was initially staged. Look at this. In 1917, 5.5 million tons of coal off the Bloom. Almost 9,000 people probably employed on the Bloomsburg Bridge. And because the Bloomsburg wasn't just largely DL&W, there was a lot of large deals. The largest DL&W operations were on the Bloomsburg, but they also had a lot of third-party operations in the Wyoming Valley. So they were hauling a lot of coal too.
A lot of trays of pizza.
So this is the yard. You can see empties that are staged to go to the mines. This is looking north. The tracks are all gone north of here. It doesn't, south of here, excuse me. The tracks end north of here today. You can see how busy the coal yard was, not just with trains. Now why they allowed this, I don't know. This was the Kingston Station, right in the middle of the yard, the coal yard. This is the south end of the yard where there was a roundhouse behind these engines, coal dock, and there was blacksmith shops to repair things. Okay. And you can see all the coal going on. It had its own roundhouse, which was originally 14 stalls and rebuilt to 10. The Woodward Colliery, that was also one of the biggest ones. Erie Lackawanna service, this one as well.
Don, we need to wrap up.
Okay, and it got modernized, and that's pretty much it. We'll end there. Okay, I hope that helped. Sorry, I didn't time it well enough.
A lot of good stuff in a short little time.
Yeah.
And you did all the colorization yourself?
Really? Yeah. Those are all black and white?
So what's the deal with lunch?
Lunch is available over on that side, so there are sandwiches.
We go by good looks and age? Okay.
3 types
Here I
of
go.
sandwiches, salad, there's orzo, and there are chips and what have you. So help yourselves, go back to your seats so you can eat while you're sitting down, and enjoy your lunch.
That Keyser Valley branch is crazy.
It's funny you call it Keyser because that's probably actually you know why? Yeah. Right. Well, it was named after Timothy King. Yeah, it's a Revolutionary War hero. And I heard about Keyser multiple times too, and I heard people correct others. I would have said Kaiser, but it's actually probably originally was Keyser, but it's more people just call it. That number 47. So there was a DL&W operation in there called the Continental. In fact, you'll see that it's at Continental Street and Kaiser Avenue. It was probably something the DL&W eventually intended on my own, but they got to. So they sold the rights to Glen Alden, probably. Sold the rights to a smaller operator.
That was actually really developed like Glen Alden?
Probably not. It was probably a third party that decided to build a slope down to one of the cities. It's a slope.
Because of the fact it says number 4. See that as part of a bigger company.
I don't know, or maybe it has to do with the number of the closing or anything. I'm not sure.
Camera shut off.
Yeah, I never knew all that stuff.